That's one point away. Yep. Sam Bennett, Brady Kachuk.
This is very dangerous. People can get cracked skulls. We don't need to watch much more of this. People can crack their skulls doing that.
And Miller dropped the gloves, and Perico's going to answer. And Perico, the way, speeds Eichel into the zone, flipping it through, scores! Game tied.
So some people on the interwebs, for those of you who are listening in podcast format and can't necessarily make out the audio of what you're listening to, that was Canada, in all of its politeness and maturity, booing the American national anthem at some hockey game that occurred yesterday. It was Team Canada versus Team USA. I do not watch organized sports unless it's darts, bowling, and poker. I don't know if you consider poker a sport. People are saying FAFO. Fudge around, find out. When you boo the national anthem, then you get your asses handed to you in the first 3 fights of the game. You get your asses handed to you as the outcome of the game. I don't think it's FAFO. I definitely think it's a little bit of karma. And I think it's really, really stupid. I'm not going to say something like hyperbolic, like I'm ashamed to be Canadian, or this doesn't represent me as a Canadian. It's a big country. You have a lot of people who echo this idiotic sentiment, but they don't represent me as a Canadian any more than I, as a Canadian, represent Canada through my actions and my words and my deeds. Stupid. A bunch of idiots. That entire stadium was filled with a bunch of, well, let me rephrase. Those booing the American national anthem are a bunch of brain-dead idiots. Propagandized morons who don't understand that they're being played right now like they were played in 2020 during COVID, like they're played for Ukraine, like you were played for the jibby jab, the face masks, the social distancing, the locking yourself at home, like you were played for, what's the most recent iteration? The trucker protest. Idiots. Dumb, childish, petulant. And you're only going to hurt yourselves, but I bet it feels good when you're doing it. You know, I'm looking at posts online today, and people are like, oh, you know, this is just, look how the Canadians are reacting to the tariffs, and that's like somehow an indication that the tariffs are unjust. This is actually confirmation that you might deserve a little bit more of a spanking from Big Brother. You're like, whatever Canada thinks of itself, whatever Trudeau, Jagmeet, Pierre Poilievre think, they are not equal partners in this relationship that is North America. Whether you like it or not, it's not an unpatriotic thing to say. It's a realistic thing to say. We're not trading equals. You're not military equals. You're not equals in this relationship, and play it accordingly. You want to play it like a bunch of spoiled, rotten brats who would sit there and boo the national anthem because you're angry about a dispute between the government. Congratulations. You are Justin Trudeau's useful idiots. All of you in that stadium, congratulations. You might as well have Justin Trudeau or Jagmeet Singh with little strings on your arms or their fists up your butt. A bunch of useful idiots. And I said, you know, like, anyone booing the national anthem is an idiot. Anybody saying this is good is an idiot. And you go on Twitter and you see who's booing it and who's celebrating it, idiots. And this is not nationally limited. They were booing the Canadian national anthem, I forget where, recently, in response to that. The only defense is going to be, well, you did it first. All right. It's stupid. But you know what else is overtly stupid? Oh, yeah, you know, it's like things start off as good negotiations, a nice arrangement, and then it becomes a sense of entitlement. Let me just show you one minor fact. It's like, you know, somehow people don't really know this. You guys know what tariffs Canada already imposes on U.S. imports? I mean, I'm not the first person to discover this, and it's not new news, but it's not worth not knowing. Milk, poultry, other stuff here. Look at this. Yeah, dairy products, tariff range from 245% to 298% on items like milk, cheese, and butter. Poultry, 238%. Fish products, subject to 100% tariff. Tobacco products, 100% tariff. Do you know what's an amazing thing? Like, maybe Canadians might want to think about this. It feels good. It feels good to cut off your nose. It doesn't really feel good to cut off your nose to spite your face, but congratulations on doing it. It feels good to pick that little scab and then get a nice, massive infection. Do you guys know that 1 in 4 children in Canada live in what we call food insecure households? So cost of living is already too high in Canada. Housing is already too low in Canada. 1 in 4 children suffers from food insecurity in Canada, but you got a stadium full of privileged, arrogant, pompous Trudeau, Jagmeet Singh puppets booing the national anthem of your biggest trading partner, the one that provides you basically military defense. And you sit there booing and biting the hand, not that feeds you, but biting the hand that you work with, all the while saying, we're the best partners, we're good friends, we have a long history, and you're booing the national anthem like a bunch of idiots. So congratulations. I'm sitting here as a Canadian in America watching Canada brainwashed, and they don't even understand it. And then some people say, Viva, it's not all of Canada. Of course it's not all of Canada. You know, the truckers that were driving across the country from east, west, north, and south to land on Ottawa to protest for the rest of the Canadians who don't even know that they need people to protest for their own rights because they don't think they have any. Like Stockholm Syndrome, Ottawa government employees. They've got it good. You know, they can afford inflation. They can afford to work from home when the government locks things down. Not middle Canada so much. You're like, yeah, they were the ones protesting for the protection of others despite them not knowing it. You know what the only problem was? The majority of Canadians didn't support the trucker protest at the time, thought that it was Russian-funded right-wing Nazi extremism, and basically supported Justin Trudeau's invocation of the Emergencies Act. And I say this from my own milieu. Maybe it's Montreal, maybe it's Quebec, maybe it's Ontario. That's already 40% of Canada. British Columbia, they're up to 60% of Canada. The majority of Canadians did not appreciate what the truckers were doing for them. And the majority of Canadians, I would dare say, thought it was wrong, bad, noisy, disruptive, yada, yada, yada. You know, take a knee for BLM during 2020 COVID. Arrest Maxime Bernier when he's having an outdoor rally with 35 people in Alberta. So, yeah, unfortunately, you can't help people who don't want to help themselves. And it seems that not only does Canada not want to help itself, they want to flush themselves down the toilet if it means starving their own children, if it means ruining their own environment, as by their own logic, and booing the national anthem of someone who you're going to have to come groveling back on your hands and knees to get something of a reasonable agreement between the parties now. But it feels good. It feels morally righteous to boo people because, hey, you might be suffering. You might have starving children. You might be dying waiting in your ERs and your free socialized health care. You might be dying in record numbers, excess deaths, whatever. But at least you're not American, right? Congratulations. Oh, but just and talking about the drug thing. It's a pretext, right? You know, the fentanyl crossing the border from Canada. It's just a pretext. It's only 1% of what they seize. 1%. The amount of fentanyl seized coming from Canada could kill what? Millions of Americans. Oh, it's just a handful of Venezuelan gangs taking over apartment buildings in Aurora, Colorado. Oh, they're not 150-year-old recipients of social security. It's just that we don't know their birthdays. It's just a little bit of fraud. Now, listen to this. This is Sam Cooper. Let me just make sure I don't want to. How do I do this? Breaking another bombshell expose by superstar investigative journalist Sam Cooper. Which, by the way, let's play this here.
Daniela, I'm hearing from current and former high-level police officers that say, despite what the Globe and Mail or Daniel Dale at CNN are reporting about, 40 kilograms is it. No, Canadians have no idea the level of criminal money laundering running through our cities that's connected to this. So that's the issue. I just want to add, before we look, where do we go from here? What Mark is saying about a hurricane, that hurricane is going to hit us with 25% or more if we don't put a real fentanyl czar in place. That is someone with credibility that the US government, look, they're not going to be fooled if you put a Justin Trudeau office lackey in that position. They need someone that can assure the American government that the RCMP will work with the DEA if they want to put a wiretap on a triad boss or a cartel boss in Vancouver and Toronto, because it didn't happen before. The last point is, look, this US-Canada strike force on organized crime, I believe the American government is going to want to see legal memorandums of understanding signed with Ottawa saying, this isn't just pretty language to put off a tariff. This is some sort of joint laws between Canada and the United States where we will have, you working with the fentanyl czar. If the FBI and DEA want to come up to Vancouver and bust one of these triad command control money laundering nodes, which, by the way, I'm afraid I'll say it.
Say it.
Some of these bosses are connected to funding of the Trudeau Liberals. I'll just drop that because it's true.
Well, let's play it out.
And I believe the Trump administration knows it. So the Americans...
We can stop there. You understand, you might want to ask yourself, what's the push to decriminalize hard drugs up in Canada? Might it be because some of the people who would then benefit from the contracts are already tied to the government? Possibly. No, it's only 1%. By the way, it's an amazing thing how after Trump puts a spotlight on a problem, then it finally forces the propagandists, even at the CBC, to start reporting on that problem. Remember, it's not a problem. It doesn't exist. He's a liar. But it's there, and it's not really a big deal, but it's a big deal. We've already known about it, and we're working with the U.S. to fix it right now. Look at this. These are headlines from CBC News. How Mexican cartels and Chinese criminal networks are moving cocaine of the sea through Canadian ports. Here, let's do another one here. Want to get rid of fentanyl? Tackle money laundering first, say experts. Lax penalties regulations have allowed financial crime to flourish in Canada. Number 3, Canada's fentanyl czar lays out his goals. Stop the drug from crossing U.S. northern border. Rule created in response to Trump's broad border concerns. Sorry. So it's an amazing thing. And congratulations to all of you idiots who took the bait and participated in that debacle. That shameful act that if you think Canada looks good booing the American national anthem when you call the Americans brash, uninformed, uneducated, boorish, whatever, congrats. You're idiots. You played right into it, and now you've just made everything worse for yourself. Those sanctions that they imposed on Russia as a result of the war between Russia and Ukraine, guess who they didn't hurt? So enjoy your tariffs, Canada. And guess who they will hurt? You'll have more than 1 in 4 children suffering from food insecurity. Serenity now. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Good evening, people. It's Sunday night. I'm sorry about that rant. I was pissed off watching that. A bunch of barking seals. Good evening. It's the Viva and Barnes Sunday Night Law Extravaganza, and we've got one hell of a show for you. Before we get into it, I do my best to read all the super chats, rumble rants, and the tipped questions on locals. We're going to favor the tipped questions on locals. If I miss them and you're going to be miffed, do not give them because I don't like people feeling miffed, rook, shield, whatever. Do my best, and that's all I can do. We will end on CommuTube and go over to Rumble and vivabarneslaw.locals.com. We vote with our eyeballs and we support the free speech platform that supports us. Then we go over to Locals for our after party. It's going to be awesome. And Barnes will join in a second. But before we get there, because we do have a beautiful sponsor for tonight, by the way, I'm going to show it to you. It's right here and here. It's an amazing thing. But you know, my wife is a neuroscientist. Did I tell you about this? I think you all know that my wife is a neuroscientist. So I get to pick the brains whenever, we get calls for sponsors. And I want to know that they're legit. I want to know that they passed the muster when it comes to my wife's neuroscientist PhD analysis. And it does. Senolytics. Have you heard of this? It's a class of ingredients discovered less than 10 years ago, and they're being called the biggest discovery of our time, promoting healthy aging and enhancing your physical regime. You get old, you start to age, and you start to hurt. And there is something called Senolytics, which takes care of what they call zombie cells. Now, the quality of Senolytic is this thing. It's like a detox. You do it once a month, 2 days, and it's supposed to get rid of the zombie cells, and it does. At least it's amazing. If someone would have told me that the science-backed ingredients that could help me feel younger a while back, wouldn't have believed it. I still feel pretty good. My knees are hurting, but they're feeling a little better now. Senescent cells cause symptoms of aging, such as aches and discomfort, slow workout recoveries, sluggish mental health, and energy associated with the middle-age feeling. Also known as zombie cells, they are old and worn out and not serving useful function for our health anymore, but are taking up space and nutrients from our healthy cells. When I was on the phone with them, I asked, explain to me like I'm an idiot, and they did. They said, it's like having leaves on a tree that are no longer absorbing, transferring, or transforming sun energy into energy. And so you prune them. And this is what the Senolytics does. Much like pruning the yellowish and dead leaves off a plant, Qualia Senolytics removes those worn out senescent cells to allow for the rest of them to thrive in the body. Takes 2 days a month. There's 12 pills in here, 6 and 6. The formula is non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, and the ingredients are meant to complement one another, factoring in the combined effects of all ingredients together. It's got a 100-day money-back guarantee. Clinically tested 2-day rejuvenation regimen may hold the key to unlocking cellular health and revitalizing tissues and the body. Go to Qualia Life, Qualia, qualialife.com/Viva for up to 50% off. Use code Viva at checkout for an additional 15% off. Qualialife.com. Promo code Viva/Viva for 15% off your purchase. The link is in the description anyhow. Thank you, Qualia. It's amazing stuff. And get fit, get healthy, and stay sharp. By the way, the Qualia Mind, there's a little bit of caffeine in here, so don't take it before going to bed, but it's good stuff. Yes, I've very much enjoyed it. All right, people. Link in the description. What I wanted to talk about. Well, let's get to some of these tipped questions before we go anywhere. I wrote a question above, looking for help. A friend's daughter get a book self-published, Melmat. I'll do an episode on that in locals. I mean, I'll have to get my wife in on that because she's the one who actually self-published. Where the heck is it? Louis the Lobster. Well, it's not here. Oh, you know why? Because I stuck a copy of Louis the Lobster in the Tesla Cybertruck to give it over to Fresh and Fit. So they'll find the Louis the Lobster book somewhere in the car. That was one of the Easter eggs. But we'll do that one day over on vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Then we've got that guy dude. It says, sorry, do you or Barnes happen to know an internet defamation lawyer? I have a case with likely Section 230 implications, and I'm not sure where to look. I would say email Barnes at barneslawllp.com, and that's probably the best way to at least try to reach out to Barnes. But there's Ron Coleman. There's a bunch. You have to go into the lawyer community. You'll find them. Some days I feel like I'm 150 years old. Go Trump and Elon. Yeah, no, dude. What we're witnessing right now in real time is the wildest thing on earth. I learned COBOL in the early 80s. Colleges were phasing it out because it was obsolete 45 years ago. We're going to get into that, people. But also, before we even get there, there was a little bit more that I wanted to talk about before Robert gets here. Yes, that's what I wanted to say. I'm sorry. The good news of the day. Let me just make sure that Barnes has the link. The good news of the day. Can't forget about the people that are still locked up. The good news, I think it was Friday that it happened, actually, Valentine's Day. Dominic Box, one of the few remaining Jan 6ers who did not get released on the day of the pardon, had to fight tooth and nail and had to get people mobilized behind him to make sure it happened, got out on Valentine's Day. This is Dominic Box. We will be doing an interview together in person, figuring out the day they'll be next week. One of the Jan 6ers who was held for an additional 2 weeks. 2.5 weeks. There's still more. Jeremy Brown, who has a separate legal issue, and a number of other ones that we need to keep the pressure on. But Dominic Box got out on Friday and is enjoying his freedom from what I have seen. Imagine like getting out of prison and then biting into a nice, beautiful slice of pizza. So Dominic Box is out, and the other current pending injustices we'll get to during the stream here. Now let me see something over on CommuTube so that I don't miss too much of the super chats on CommuTube. Okay, we're good here. What did I have in the backdrop that I wanted to bring up? Here, okay, we got justices and we've got injustices. Like we forget what's still going on in Romania. Călin Georgescu talking about the lawfare, the overriding of democracy for the sake of preserving democracy. You recall that they annulled the elections in Romania because they said he couldn't have won. He had to have some help from the Russians on TikTok. I'll read you the caption after this, but this is what jackboot thugs look like, covering their face, whisking people off. It's like the more things change, the more they stay the same. Look at this.
Îmi spune și mie de ce ați venit? Cu cine vorbesc? Pe ce motiv? Pe ce motiv am întrebat?
Thugs. Now I'll get to the actual caption of this. This is Călin Georgescu. What does the monstrosity of the oppressive and anti-democratic system in Romania look like? What does democracy look like in Romania these days? Exactly as you see. This is the first in a state considered democratic, part of the EU and a strategic partner of the USA. At 6 a.m., masked men entered my campaign manager and his family home, taking advantage of an abusive search warrant. Without any charges, they tried to cause unimaginable psychological terror. They found no money, no servers, no, quote, trolls. End quote. They only found a family sleeping with their 6-year-old daughter. They confiscated the laptops and my campaign manager and his wife. They confiscated the laptops of my campaign manager and his wife, who was also my press manager, through which they communicated on my behalf on social media accounts and mobile phones. Take it with a grain of salt. I don't know if it's true. I believe Kaylin Georgescu. There is very little in life that could be more of an affront to human decency than fraudulent misrepresentation. I don't know what they posted. I tried to get in touch and see if we can get some info, or at least if Kaylin can come back on. They post through his social media accounts, unbeknownst to him, after they seize his computers. At the same time, another raid was taking place in my assistant's office, from which the oppressive system even took my candidacy file for the elections, thus trying to block my actions regarding the resumption of the second round of the abusively canceled elections. This is the European Union we joined. These are the values we want. No thanks. We joined the EU for moral and social principles and values, hoping that we would be supported in evolving intellectually, economically, and socially. I hope for a better healthcare and education system, improved infrastructure, and the protection of civil liberties and national identity. What did we receive in return? What you see below. We received oppression and abuse in exchange for our dignity. Europe treats us like slaves, and if we don't obey the orders from Brussels, we get bullied, as a reminder that we have no rights, only obligations. J.D. Vance, Elon Musk, Richard Grenell, von der Leyen, what do you think about this? I can tell you what I think about this. Have I sworn yet this episode? It's bullshit. We understand what is going on right now. Now that you understand that USAID was funding, if not entirely, at least funding in part 90% of the news outlets in Ukraine, what do you think they're doing out in Romania? This is manufacturing consent. It's manufacturing the semblance of democracy. What it is a techno-tyranny. It is the loss of national autonomy to the greater good of the European Union. They're locking up people for social media posts in England, and they are literally undoing democracy in Romania to preserve democracy. That's all I have to say about that. Oh, well, Robert Barnes, how goes the battle?
Good. The interesting book behind me that I've had for a while called Lords of Poverty, which is about the abuse of the entire financial aid structure globally, in terms of whether it's foreign aid, in terms of NGOs, in terms of so-called charities. And it was this reporter unmasks it all years ago, and I had never fully processed the name on the author of the book. The author is Graham Hancock. Yeah, Graham Hancock, the guy that's talking about the lost civilization and taking on the archaeologist and all the other folks, saying maybe this technology that made the pyramids or other things wasn't made from local copper chisels and what have you. Some religious folks take value in it in the way he describes some things. Non-religious folks take some value in it. It's just the establishment that doesn't. But great, it was really a great work of investigative journalism, and I just never processed. It's probably the same Graham Hancock.
Yeah, not that I don't read a lot of books, Robert, but I saw it was Graham Hancock as you were talking about.
What a weekend! America's back when we're whooping the Canadians in hockey, and we're not only whooping them on the ice rink, we're physically whooping them to start the game after they booed our anthem.
I don't know how bare knuckle fist fighting is still allowed in hockey. I've seen enough people smack their heads on ice and elsewhere to know. That always makes me very, very nervous. But yeah, look, it's not FAFO because it could have gone the other way. It's karma, and karma played out the way it should.
Maybe South Park is going to come true in another way. Maybe we've got to invade Canada. We'll take all the Brit lovers, deport them to Starmer in Britain. He apparently likes all those kind of people. We'll give Montreal to the French. They want it anyway. And we'll take the rest of it. And we'll keep the good Canadians and kick out the bad ones. And we'll have Trump appoint Viva Prime Minister of the 51st state of Canada.
It'll be governor. I want to bring up this meme, but I can't seem to bring it up without sure.
Governor Fry. That sounds good.
No, there's a joke now of an American flag, and it's got all the stars and stripes and one extra star on the bottom. No, it's like you hear them booing the anthem. Like, why would Trump even want those types of
polite Canadians? I think Trump is. I'm gonna be on most likely with the Duran on Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern time to break down all of the different geopolitical global impacts of Trump's policies and politics. I don't think he actually wants Canada as a 51st state. I think he does want more geopolitical control of important shipping routes, areas where submarines and naval activity can occur. He doesn't trust the Canadian government to be a reliable ally over time. I mean, the Canadians basically use NAFTA to steal a lot of our auto industry, like Mexico did, and Trump has always found that to have been a bad negotiation strategy. But Trump always looks past the thing. I mean, the short answer on all of it is Trump's always going to go to something the other side is terrified of in order to get what he really wants. His first position is not going to be his final position. But he wants people to believe it's his final position so he can get the negotiated outcome he wants. Sooner or later, the Canadians will fold like their hockey team.
I'd say all that he wants is a path to connect Alaska to mainland America. So, by the way, the Duran Cup, I noticed it before you start. That is the Duran logo, people.
Yeah. And you can get different flags. This one's the American flag for whooping up on the Canadians.
He'd be happy with British Columbia as a territory, but not necessarily as a population, because they're more radical than what's the place there in on the West Coast in America, Portland. So
that's got to be one of the most humiliating losses for the Canadians, in forever. I mean, you lose at home in hockey,
and there were three unanswered goals when Canada was up.
I know. Canada gets up, they think it's working after they got beat up physically for booing the anthem. Those are some real American hockey players, right? You boo our anthem, we're going to come out and we'll have not one fight, not two fights, but 3 fights in the first 9 seconds. Like, there you go. That's real hockey. That's real America.
Robert, what do we have on the menu for this evening?
We have Brook, was working on Valentine's. Our Valentine's to Pfizer was the Brook Jackson appeal filed in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, posted the entire merits brief, worked on with Warner Mendenhall, Jeremy Friedman, and Alexis Anderson. They posted it at vivabarneslaw.locals.com, so if you want to read it and see it, you can. It's available for everybody. But we got the Brook Jackson case. And what is the Department of Justice? The attorneys working this case, are they hiding the existence of this appeal and the legal and political issues from the purported party they're supposedly representing? I have reason to believe that President Trump, Vice President Vance, Secretary Kennedy, and the new FDA commissioner, and Attorney General Bondi have been excluded by the attorneys running rogue at the Justice Department by not apprising them of this case, because they might have a different opinion about how the case should progress than Biden's predecessors.
And this particular issue is going to come up a few times tonight, is where the new DOJ might not have the same perspective as the old DOJ, Eric Adams, the people quitting en masse. And so it's an interesting thing, is like how the new DOJ, which has a totally wildly different perspective on the case, might not proceed according. Well, we'll get into it with Brook Jackson.
Yeah, part of the reason why the election happened it relates to this case. So we'll be discussing the Brook Jackson case. We got Robert Francis Kennedy is the new Secretary of Health and Human Services, and Tulsi Gabbard is the new Director of National Intelligence. If you are members of sportspicks.locals.com, we predicted the exact number of senators that would vote for both of them. Congratulations to all those who trailed.
And just to celebrate Robert's acumen here, he called it. He called it before it was at 78%, and they all did very well. By the time I looked, and it was too late, and risking 80 cents to make 20, I have a bit of a bigger flavor for risk than that. But yeah, you're right, 52, and you're calling 52 for Kash Patel's vote next week as well, correct?
Yep. And the Mitch McConnell will continue to destroy whatever little bit of his legacy is left, just like the Federalist Society is busy damaging itself with the actions it took in the Eric Adams case. And one of the topics tonight is Trump versus the world. The judicial branch coming after him, the various rogue lawsuits being filed, states suing him, the whole bureaucracy waging war on him. The Daily Starmer, the leader of the United Kingdom, is begging for a meeting because he doesn't like where the Ukraine peace deal is going. The Brits are yet to wake up. The empire's over, Brits. It's over. They apparently didn't get that message from about a century ago. We've got the unitary executive, which is going to go up to the Supreme Court and I think get a favorable ruling. We'll be discussing that, as well as DOGE's complete constitutional authority. Elon Musk is being sued. because they're saying he's an unappointed officer. We'll explain why what he's doing is precisely not only constitutional, but statutorily authorized and by precedent by no less than Barack Hussein Obama, who put it in place in the first place. And now the Constitution compels President Trump to be doing what he's doing. The United Insurance Company sued because they were substituting their physicians with AI. And apparently they trained that algorithm to just be deny. We'll be discussing that. Of course, the United's executive was the one shot down in the streets of New York, which apparently some reporters at CNN were cheerleading the legal defense of.
Oh, but Bill Burr has gone off the deep end on that, but we'll touch on
poor
that.
Bill. Yeah, the Bill's he's just not the same in the last 12 months or so. He needs to go back to Boston and get beat up by his dad a little more, and then maybe we'll get back to some normal fun Bill. The COVID mandates in court. I was before the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals in Minneapolis this past week, where the judges were shocked to hear me discuss that the impact of their cases impact real human beings. They refused to believe such a thing. Oh, how do our judicial opinions impact human beings? This is absurd, Mr. Barnes. Maybe we should just replace all of them with AI. We might get something closer to the rule of law. We've got the Second Amendment expungement issues. When is an expungement not an expungement? The Wisconsin courts are trying to figure out ways to weasel around that Second Amendment protection under the statutes for firearms possession. Attorney General Paxton cleared in Texas, and he was also on recently with Tucker Carlson explaining the connection between George Soros, drug cartels, and illegal immigration. Speaking of illegal immigration, churches are suing President Trump, demanding that their church regions and any property owned by a church be completely exempt from any immigration activity, from any effort to deport illegals and criminals. Let's see. They're all saying they have special rights. Bureaucrats got special rights. Churches got special rights, all not to follow federal law on the issue of illegal immigration. And then when is discovery? We'll talk about a case. There was a civil rights case and how the courts constantly contradict themselves on when the failure to produce discovery is sanctionable. That if you're a civil litigant suing a big corporation, they impose standards on you that they don't impose if you're a corrupt cop who lost the video. Then it's, oh, you poor little police officer, you just accidentally lost that video that exposed you. That there's testimony that says you even told people it exposes you. We're going to say you didn't do it intentionally and not even allow the jury to know that you lost that video. So we'll be discussing the hypocrisy, judicial hypocrisy, judges sitting on NGOs that are being funded by USAID, ruling on cases concerning USAID, judges ruling just like they were doing in Pfizer cases when they held stock in Pfizer. That's how corrupt our federal judicial branch has sadly and steadily become. So that and more on this edition of Law for the People.
I got to bring this one right up because I'm not concerned. I don't understand. Rob A., who I know, says, after 3+ years, I'm canceling my memberships here. The disrespect from our closest ally for 120+ years is ridiculous. Unsubbing on every platform. I can't for the life of me understand which way this goes. I think I know Rob is Canadian. And so where's the disrespect?
Is he insulted by the America smacking around the Canadians?
No, I don't know if it's a joke.
Mad that he's an American disappointed by it wasn't Americans that disrespected Canada. It was Canada that disrespected Americans.
I need to get clarity. I need to get clarity. So I'm going to Rob, what does this mean? Serious question. Yeah. Because I know that I've seen Rob's name forever. Unless the disrespect is coming from me. He's
a Canadian nationalist, and he wants to take on the Americans. Well, build up your hockey team, eh? If you build up that hockey team, eh? You won't get humiliated on the global stage, eh?
Okay. I don't know if he was joking. I'm going to take it as a joke. Robert, let's start with the one that I find. Well, we'll start with the one that has a very interesting analogy to, if you want the right of return for 6 million people, why do you want your own state? Proposal of Zelensky to resolve the war in Russia. Our proposal is we want to join NATO and get nukes. I mean, I appreciate Trump comes in and negotiates. His first offer is more than he wants so you can get to what he wants. But then you come in with that, and that's stupid. I mean, that's not good negotiation. Like to say, I'm going to overplay my hand and say, that's dumb. That is like saying, oh, I want to settle. I want to solve this war, resolve this war. The two very issues were, we don't want you encroaching on our space and having nukes on the border of Russia. and we want to join NATO. I mean, those are the two things that started the war, and Zelensky's demanding them as a way to get out of it. J.D. Vance says, no, idiot, and you're not talking to Joe Biden anymore. Is there any sense to be made from the demand, and how do you see a peace being resolved in Ukraine, Russia?
Well, I think President Trump has had plans on this all along, and there's going to be a lot of misdirection, a lot of, as the great red herring reference in the book Presumed Innocent. Megyn Kelly was asking about what are some other good writers in that same vein as Scott Turow, who wrote 1L. I don't know if you remember that. That was about his first year at Harvard Law School. The Presumed Innocent is my favorite of his books by a long mile. And I like the original film. The new Apple TV series doesn't measure up. But there's great truth in that first one. But the great defense lawyer in that case references red herrings. There's going to be a lot of red herrings in what Trump is doing vis-a-vis Ukraine, but I think within 6 months he'll get a peace deal in Ukraine. Now, what he's requiring, for example, he's saying no more free money. So if Ukraine wants any money to keep its own government and society afloat, because we're actually keeping everything in Ukraine afloat, not just the military effort, he said, you got to give me the raw earth minerals. So I don't think they want to give away that for cheap, the way Trump wants to do it. There'll be a peace deal, and the peace deal will be Russia will get the 4 territories that have been historically and traditionally Russian, along with Ukraine, the entire Donbass region. Ukraine will have the rest of Ukraine, so they'll still have water access, Dnipro access, control of Kiev, control of a lot of resources, agricultural and mineral and others. So they'll be able to survive and sustain themselves, and the stupid war will finally be over. And Trump will try to use it as a bridge to try to heal some degree of relations with Russia. You're having the same thing in Germany. I mean, if the AfD wins in those elections coming up, Germany wants to create the old deal that Helmut Kohl had with Russia, which was providing cheap energy to Germany. So we'll see what happens there. But Vance and Hegseth and Trump are all on the same page that the only thing to be done in Ukraine is a peace deal, and they get it done in 6 months. They could care less what Zelensky thinks. Zelensky is irrelevant. He's always been a stage actor reading from a script, and he doesn't understand Trump has no interest in what his script is. So Trump has full authority to try to get a peace deal done. Without the money, Ukraine is nothing. So as Trump put, he doesn't care what Zelensky thinks. He'll sign on the bottom line when Trump tells him to sign on the bottom line. That's who and what Trump is. Zelensky is irrelevant. He won't even be part of the negotiations. That tells you how irrelevant Ukraine always was to this entire conflict. This conflict was a proxy war by the Western deep state allies and Russia. That's using the people of Ukraine and the land of Ukraine to do it. But that war is coming to an end. Oh, you're on mute.
I wanted to find the evidence to show, for those who didn't fully appreciate, it wasn't just military aid; it was subsidizing the small businesses.
Oh yeah, I mean the whole government. We were paying for their janitors, for crying out loud.
This is from December 6, 2023, and now it will make a lot more sense. Ernst demands answers on small business aid sent to Ukraine. As the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, continues to hide from accountability on foreign aid sent to Ukrainian small businesses, U.S. Senator John Ernst, Republican from Iowa, ranking member yada, 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 is doubling down on her oversight efforts on behalf of America's entrepreneurs. This follows the White House recent request for approximately $106 billion in new aid for Ukraine without answering Ernst. So it goes on. It's very interesting. Now, the USAID didn't trigger the same emotion back then because we didn't know what we know now. And I guess that might be a good segue to come into the last week of uncoveries and lawsuits and attempts to... It's an amazing thing that the left, which used to be anti-vax, anti-big business, anti-war of the 70s, has now become the party of big pharma, big corporation, war, and corruption and concealment of the corruption. Crying about what Elon Musk has uncovered in the last week. We'll start from ground level. DOGE, Department of Governmental Efficiency. What is its technical legal status within the Trump administration? Is it an actual, did they create a new administration? Is it a special administration? Like, what is DOGE as a political legal entity?
So when Barack Obama came in, he got Congress to give him special authority to create kind of an almost off the books digital services group of people that he could use to sort of monitor all of government. And so he got congressional approval for the authorizing the funds of it, and the right for them to not have to clear traditional conflicts of interest checks. So Obama created that by statute. And so all Trump did is take Obama's authority and call it DOGE. That's it. So he's got complete congressional authority for it directly from Congress, thanks to Barack Hussein Obama, who the media never complained about when he did this. Now, as to the constitutional authority, the unitary executive provides that Article 2 gives vests all executive power in the President of the United States. It is the most broad giving of power as any part of the branch of government. Judicial power is restricted and limited in a whole bunch of ways. Legislative power restricted and limited in a whole bunch of ways. The executive power is only restricted by what's given to the legislature, what's given to the judicial, or what's in the Bill of Rights. So that gives you an idea, and some provisions that are also included in Article 2 in terms of jury trial rights and things like that. And so so he's got complete carte blanche as the only elected person in the entire executive branch to do whatever he wants in that respect. In fact, there's the take care clause, which he's ironically being sued for, which he's implementing the take care clause, which requires that he take care to make sure the laws are enforced. That's his obligation. Now here, there's a constitutionally authorized component for DOGE, which I haven't heard discussed more broadly. Here's the provision of Article 1, which the president under Article 2 is required to take care that this provision of Article 1 be executed. Here's what it says. No money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law, and a regular statement and account of the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. All DOGE is implementing the Constitution of the United States. All it's doing is the president required to take care to make sure the laws are executed. And it's from Article 1 that says this shall be done. It says the money shall make sure that it's being done by law. And secondly, that he has to make sure it's that there's public accountability for all receipts and all expenditures. And that's what DOGE is doing, making accountability. Is this money authorized by law? What they're discovering is a lot of this money was not authorized by law. In fact, it's often in direct contradiction to the law.
Let me just stop you there, because the question is going to be, what right does DOGE even have to do this in the first place? The 19 to 24-year-old tech support that Elon is sending out, are they employees? Are they external contractors? Are they special appointments? Like, what even are they just as a legal entity?
The Congress created that special provision for digital access for Obama that allow these people to be almost off the books people. It's to enforce this constitutional provision. But fundamentally, it's the president of the United States implementing his constitutional obligation to make sure that any money being spent is actually been authorized by law, and to make sure the public knows what's happening to public money, public receipts, and public expenditures of public funds. So the president's constitutionally not only authorized, he's constitutionally obligated to be doing what he is doing with DOGE. And the fact that it's being discussed by Jeffrey Tucker at the Brownstone Institute based on legal research that they've done, it appears that in fact, and from other sources, it appears that every president since Truman has not had direct access to the Treasury in terms of where the money is being spent, that the deep state kind of hijacked it after World War II and has precluded every single elected president from knowing from having direct access to where the money is going. Which is, it's not only insane, it's unconstitutional. Again, the obligation is it must be disclosed to the public where all receipts and expenditures are going, and that any expenditure can only be actually issued by the Treasury if it has been authorized by law. And what DOGE is disclosing is that a whole bunch of these monies were not authorized by law. They were contradictory to law, and that is a constitutional requirement. So the president would be obligated to do this even without a statute because it's a constitutional requirement.
What is amazing is I guess it's the segue into the next issue is the pushback from the judiciary. So 3 branches of government, you have your legislative, your executive, and your judicial. The Congress controls the purse strings, which is the thing that they're saying, I don't even understand the argument as to why Trump doesn't have the authority or the oversight to look at what they're doing. But the judiciary is getting involved, and is the word hamstringing or hampering? Basically hampering Trump's ability to even do this by denying DOGE access or ordering them to destroy documents.
You see the memes in the The old DOGE dog in the chat.
Hmm.
So someone's got a meme with the DOGE dog doing like the cat dance.
I see a pregnant woman, but that's the first one that I turn. I don't know what's going on there. But Robert, like, what level of mutiny are we seeing from the judiciary in terms of tying up Trump from being able to do what he was elected to do?
So yeah, we have the two biggest hostile actors to President Trump being able to deliver are the unelected branches of government, the bureaucracy, which isn't a constitutionally recognizable branch of government because it's supposed to be subject to the elected president. But they don't see it that way. And you can now see in their lawsuits they're bringing and in the public reaction, the media reaction, and the press reaction that they think they're above the president of the United States. They think they're above the people. They think they have permanent jobs, permanently guaranteed to line their pockets and line the pockets of their pals and allies, to the shock of a lot of normies. That there's a lot of people on the left that I've heard from being like, this is not what I bought into in the Democratic Party. I didn't buy into them just spending my money without any accountability. I didn't buy into them spending money on just foreigners and weird projects. I didn't give them my money so they can line the pockets of their pals with bogus jobs and no-show jobs. I didn't do that. But the Democratic Party is saying, yeah, that's what we've been all about now for a couple of decades, is stealing taxpayer money and to line the pockets of all our political friends and allies. It was the Clinton Foundation on steroids. And it was being done through USAID, but not just USAID, National NED, and every single agency. I mean, they were spending money on things that just shock ordinary people in America. Like, hold on a second, my tax dollars were going to help to do training books in Peru? It's like, what?
No, they were saying, it's only 1% of the federal budget. It's $50 billion. And then meanwhile, Lahaina gets a one-time payment of $750. No, it's obscene beyond anything. And that it doesn't count as part of the State Department's budget itself, which is roughly the same. So there was literally no oversight whatsoever, no accountability whatsoever. And it was being used to fight the very interests of the Americans whose taxpayer dollars were going to fund these initiatives in the first place.
Absolutely. And so it was not authorized by law. It was not being made publicly transparent or even accessible to elected leaders, both in Congress and the White House. And as such, was completely unconstitutional from day one. However, the judicial branch is made up of the same professional managerial class that the bureaucracy is dominated by. And these are people who fundamentally, these are the people who gave us fascism. These are the people who gave us communism. These are the people who gave us neoliberal corporatism. In other words, they almost destroyed the entire world in the last century. These are people who should not be anywhere near power. And yet the judicial branch, by definition, is monopolized by a professional managerial class that mostly has no common sense experience at all. Most judges have never worked a real job in their lives. They've never, they have no clue. Working class? What? They have no idea. They are an old geriatric aristocracy. Or if they're younger, they're commies from overseas or were born overseas, and yet they're on the American federal bench deciding American constitutional law. So it has long been the case that our judicial branch has been disconnected and is one of the least democratic institutions that exist. And if they would just stay limited, like, for example, it was amazing to me, the number of people on social media and so-called law Twitter saying, oh, this has already been decided. You don't understand. Marbury versus Madison. Imagine saying, if I came on here and I was like, Viva, I'm now the king of America. And you're like, who says so? I do. I say, I hereby declare myself king of America. Judges don't get to declare to themselves their own power. So it's what's in the Constitution and what ain't. And judges have been usurping power that never belonged to them, that was never given to them constitutionally, because nobody held them to account. And so Marbury versus Madison was a fraud on the Constitution. Oh, we, the courts, are the only ones who can interpret the law. That's ridiculous. The constitutional oath is taken by everybody, including members of Congress, including the elected president of the United States. Not just the courts, who, when they're not busy, they go back into their chambers, they take off their black robe, and they put on their white medical scientist robe, and they come out and tell you what a medical scientist genius they are. And then they go back in and put on their medical doctor's robe and come out and tell you how they know better than your doctor does about your own health. These are the most arrogant people in the world. And if you want a highest per capita ratio of child molesters and perverts and pedophiles and sociopaths, You will find no higher per capita rate of any profession in the world more than the federal judicial branch of government. If you get to know these judges, you will never let them anywhere near your kids. That's who they are as human beings. The normies, though, didn't understand this. They thought these were just good, conscientious philosopher kings who just wanted to follow the law. And if they were part of the Federalist Society, by golly, they just wanted to implement the law under an originalist interpretation. Hogwash. Most of the Federalist Society are corporate whores who love institutional power and eviscerate constitutional liberty whenever they get the chance, more often than not. That doesn't mean everybody in the Federalist Society is bad. It just means a lot of them are bad. And was it a real big shock when it's Federalist Society members issuing crazy rulings against President Trump trying to usurp his presidential power? And what are they really trying to do? They're trying to overrule an election. They don't like the outcome of the election. So they're trying to overrule it by judicial fiat, and they have no such constitutional authority. The only question is, how does Trump handle it? Does he wait to see if the Supreme Court steps in to save the judiciary from itself like he's done in the past? Or does he say, hey, we're in an exigent circumstances, it's time to go full Andrew Jackson, the court can issue its ruling, now it can go enforce it. At a minimum, I am glad to see Elon Musk, senators, members of Congress, legal scholars, Mike Davis, others, finally coming around to what I've been arguing now for years, argued all the way back when he got in the first time. You've got to start using the impeachment power over these rogue judges, because judges, unlike everybody else, judges don't get to, you don't have to prove a misdemeanor to impeach a judge. You don't have to prove a felony to impeach a judge. Judges only serve constitutionally during good behavior. Now, our friend Law of Self-Defense has an interpretation that the judges can be removed by just straight majority vote. I don't share that interpretation. I have a policy instinct opposition to it, because then if Democrats ever take over, they'll kick out every Republican judge in the country. So I still prefer the 2/3 Senate, knowing that means we won't be able to remove these judges. But all you have to do is impeach them to wake them up. They are so accustomed. No judge has been impeached for abusing his power politically since Justice Samuel Chase at the beginning of the country.
Well, you're talking federal judges, the process is different than state judges. And we're talking by and large federal judges now, like Engelmeyer and can't think of the other names offhand. But the legal basis for which...
Nichols is the Trump-appointed Federalist Society nitwit. And I had a case in front of him on behalf of Cassandra Fairbanks, who I think is now Cassandra McDonald. If I got the last name wrong, my apologies, Cassandra, but that's what I remember. I once went to a birthday party, which she did like a huge thing for a little kid. She was not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. She wasn't like certain influencers trying to hook up with Elon. No comment on those. Hey, all you can say is congratulations to Elon, congratulations to her. She has money in the bank for life. And he's got kid number 325. He and Julian Assange clearly want to propagate the world with their own kids.
We're talking about Ashley St. Clair, who claims to have had the baby of Elon Musk 5 months ago, now coming public. I don't think anyone on Musk's team has denied it.
No.
Like Pozo said, God bless. May everyone live a happy, healthy life. But it's
and I get the quartering and some other conservatives saying, I get that. Quartering is more, I would put it as more independent. I don't think he self-identifies as a conservative. He's more blue collar, old school Wisconsin. But putting that little fun social drama aside, I can never get into that social drama for the most part. I was like, I don't really care. It's like, congrats to her. She's got economic security. Congrats to Elon.
She's got another baby.
She's not the most unfortunate looking woman in the world. So congrats to both. But Elon and his kids is getting kind of funny. But that was Julian Assange's father. Was that? That's where Julian Assange had like nine kids. He's up there with Elon, I think.
Wait, Assange has many kids, or he's many kids of the same father?
Kids, different
different
mamas.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I think a similar inclination. It's like they want to repropagate the planet with little Julian, little Assanges, and little Musks.
And you know what the funny thing is?
To save humanity from itself.
The minor fight that I got into on Saturday is like, okay, look, statistically, it's better to have a father. This is not the way to maximize your chances of having a happy family life, but good for her. Nice, happy, healthy baby. When it comes to Assange, it might, if he didn't go sticking his schmeckle in people, maybe he doesn't get accused of what's not raw dogging. It's called stealthing in Sweden. Maybe he avoids a rape charge if he just keeps it in his pants and avoids a lot of grief in life. But okay, setting all of that aside.
To each their own. But yeah, it's But it is. I will agree with Alex Jones. Jones sees it entirely differently because his entire worldview is: are you pro-humanity or are you anti-humanity? He sees there's no other ideological framework for Jones, and he's like, Elon is right now pro-humanity, so he's for supporting Elon. He's for more human beings out there, and you know I empathize more with Alex's perspective than others on these ideological issues. I share a similar framework. But, I mean, what we're seeing is the judicial branch has gone rogue. It's really gone rogue all the way along. The judicial branch gave us the Civil War. Without Dred Scott, the Civil War doesn't happen. What most likely happens is slavery fades out by the 1870s, 1880s, like it did in a range of other countries around the world without such a conflict occurring. But the Dred Scott made that impossible to occur, practically speaking, and guaranteed a war. So, I might write a book about how the Supreme Court's one of the worst institutions in the history of the world, and the American federal judicial branch, because I'm a harsh critic of it, even though I'm constantly in front of it, because I believe you have to knock on the door to get your answers. You don't run away and hide as the solution to bad people doing bad things. I think President Trump's instincts on this are correct, which is to take it up to the Supreme Court, get the lower district courts to make one crazy ruling after another, get them to make crazy, like, no, Mr. President, you can't even ask where the money is going. No, Mr. President, you can't even appoint people concerning national security. No, Mr. President, you can't even determine who does and doesn't get criminally prosecuted. No, basically, they're stripping him of all of his elected constitutional duties.
They want to turn America into basically the parliamentary system that was what they fought from back in 1776. And it's like, neuter is not even the right word. It's eliminate the position. Now the executive, the Congress gets to spend your money. The judicial gets to tell the president that he's got no oversight in terms of how it's spent. And they come up with these decisions that he can't even fulfill or carry out his election promises for which he was elected.
And his constitutional obligations. And that's what makes it outrageous. But they are so over the top, so extreme, so ridiculous. You can't hire people. You can't fire people. You can't cut spending. You can't reduce spending. You can't divert spending. You can't change organization. You can't look into intelligence issues. You can't look into national security issues. You can't do this. Basically, you can't be the elected head of the executive branch. And we, the unelected judicial branch and unelected bureaucracy, are going to seize all power. And we're going to do whatever we want, whenever we want, like we've been doing since 1947. And the problem with that is the American people are outraged by it. I mean, they're losing normies. I mean, Bernie Sanders doesn't realize how much he's torched his credibility. Bend over Bernie is just in the pocket of Big Pharma. Here he is, not only votes against Robert Kennedy, who's been a lifelong friend, but votes against Tulsi Gabbard, who sacrificed her political career for him. I mean, that's what now, when Bernie says the working class, well, you do his accent much better than me. He means the bureaucracy. He means the executives at big pharmaceutical companies. That's who is Bernie's working class supporters. That's his working class allies are like him. People who have got fabulously rich in government.
His war on the millionaires and the billionaires quickly became a war on the billionaires once he started squarely fitting in with the millionaires. But it
became very selective. He had no objection when George Soros was having extraordinary influence over U.S. government policy. He had no objection when Bill Gates was having extraordinary assertion over government policy. I mean, this is where Bobby Kennedy is such a sweetheart. He only gently challenged Bernie Sanders. If I would have been there and say, Bernie, where were you when George Soros was running American foreign policy? Bernie, where were you when Bill Gates was running world global health policy? You were nowhere to be found. You were their allies. You were the little bitch of the billionaires, Bernie. That's who you were. The billionaire's bitch, Bernie Sanders. That's the reality. I would have been. That's why they're probably going to nominate me.
And then Bernie would have said,
or if they do, they'll put in closed session and Barnes will be buried under the Capitol somewhere. But I mean, this was just outlandish. This behavior by the judicial branch and the bureaucracy. And by the way, all of it's being coordinated by the same guy who stole the 2020 election. It's Mark Elias, criminal money launderer Mark Elias. For those that don't know, just because he's unindicted is no excuse. He's still a criminal. Go back and investigate Russiagate and how he was the key to the money laundering to cover that up. He is coordinating all of these lawsuits. And it raises things. I'm a huge supporter of private sector unions. In that respect, I'm different than your normie conservative. I'm a huge opponent of government unions. The government is run by the people, set by the people. I've never agreed with the idea that there can be binding contracts, binding union provisions that overrule the elected interest of the people. And so that's divesting them of their one of their few powers they have, which is the power of the franchise. But that's what all this is recognizing. That they're asserting ludicrous ideas that they basically get to run their own government, and the elected head of the executive branch can have no say. What is going to happen is this is going to force the Supreme Court and the institutionalists on the Supreme Court, who at least historically and ideologically and intellectually align with Trump's argument on this. Justice Roberts, Justice Kavanaugh, and Justice Barrett have all in the past been supporters of the unitary executive theory, namely that the elected head of the executive branch runs the executive branch, and there can't be these independent agencies that are not subject to executive discretion or control. There can't be these even congressional limitations on core constitutional executive authority. That's what the decision that ultimately Barrett jumped suit from, but Kavanaugh and Roberts went along with in terms of presidential immunity from civil suit and criminal prosecution. Similar theories. Roberts has been the biggest advocate of this. So they're creating the best factual pattern to animate the conservatives, Gorsuch, Alito, and Thomas, who've never liked these nationwide injunctions, never liked this excess and abuse of judicial power, never liked the bureaucracy invading the elected head of the executive branch because they recognize it disrespects the American people and their ability to control their own government. This is why populists and constitutionalists joined ideological conservatives in support of the unitary executive theory. It empowers the ordinary voter more than it empowers anyone else. People think of it as empowering the president, but in reality, it empowers the people to have consequence on the executive branch through their election for the president. And so I think that's the constitutional framework. And I think the Supreme Court is going to throw all this out, and they're going to finally give and I'm for Trump taking this path, because let's say Trump right now goes full Andrew Jackson. Then we don't have the Supreme Court precedent to make this permanently on our side, on the populist, constitutionalist, individual rights side of the equation. So I want the Supreme Court to rule on it. And these lower courts are so out of touch, so arrogant. So, I mean, they're so vague. I mean, if you're a federal judge and you have family members or you yourself are receiving money from U.S. aid, directly or indirectly, you should immediately recuse yourself. And yet they're not. That's bad behavior. That's sanctionable behavior. That's impeachable behavior. That's criminal behavior by these federal judges. And I think they need to impeach some of them, and realizing you're not going to remove them. But what happened when they impeached Samuel Chase, even though they knew they couldn't remove him? The whole judiciary woke up. They're like, oh, okay, sorry, maybe we won't decide to seize all this power unilaterally like we're trying to do. And maybe we shouldn't use it to weaponize it against our political adversaries like they're currently doing. This is about, do we have a constitutional republic with an elected head of the executive branch or not? That's what these set of cases are going to decide. And I want the president to force it up to the Supreme Court to decide, because the fact pattern is as favorable as it's ever been to get the Supreme Court to put an end to this nonsense once and for all.
Well, and where it's currently at now, I mean, DOGE is doing what it's doing. It's even the order from Engelmeyer out of, was it Southern District? It's saying like Elon is not allowed accessing information and has to delete whatever he's gotten. The bottom line, they're still doing it anyhow. And then there were the threats of holding Trump in criminal contempt. And then the question is, all right, great, hold Trump in criminal contempt.
Well,
who's going to arrest him?
I mean, the Supreme Court admitted that the courts have no direct power over the president in that regard.
So, I mean, it's interesting. He'll just defy the lower court orders to the extent that they're unreasonable, and then say, hold me in criminal contempt, do what you will, you're going to do nothing.
He's going to take everything up to SCOTUS and force SCOTUS to get involved earlier than they probably want. The Supreme Court would hate to rule in favor of Trump, even though they like the unitary executive, but they're going to have no choice, because they're seeing, this is the other reason to do impeachment. You need to wake up the Supreme Court that there is rage amongst the American people, and is being represented in their elected representatives and other influencers who are saying impeach, 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 impeach. Supreme Court's not used to the judicial. The judiciary has only faced this kind of blowback twice in American judicial history. Once, all the way back during FDR, where they were like, screw you, we're going to block the entire New Deal. And FDR said, I think you're a little old up there. Maybe I think you're probably overburdened. Why don't we add 9 judges or so? All of a sudden, the Supreme Court's like, well, hold on a second. We didn't really mean, and they completely capitulated, by the way, for the next decade. They went too far in FDR's camp, but that's another story for another day. And then otherwise, Justice Samuel Chase. So the history is, when the Supreme Court realizes there's rage in the American public about the judicial branch, that is discrediting the judicial branch, people like Roberts and Kavanaugh will race in to try to recover the judicial. The power of the judiciary is almost entirely dependent on the credibility of the judicial branch. And if they realize they not only are hostile to the elected head of the executive branch, they're also the members of the legislative branch are unhappy with them. People who can cut off their budgets, people who can change where venues are done. Senator Lee put out, what are some reform ideas? Get rid of the district of corruption. You completely control it. The Congress has complete authority. Congress can eliminate every court but the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the only court constitutionally required. They've said otherwise, every inferior court, in the language of the Constitution, is decided by Congress. They decide whether they exist. They decide what their jurisdiction is. They decide what cases they can handle. Now, once a federal judge is appointed, you can't change their salary, but you can change everything else. You can say, you know what? You have no more cases. Yes, you can do that overnight. You can't take away their money, but their salary, but you can take away their secretary's salary. You can take away their law clerk salary.
Well, hold on.
You can take away their U.S. Marshal's salary. It's time for Congress to start exercising meaningful oversight over the judicial branch.
What was the lawsuit, though, however, as relates to, it might be the segue, unless we have more on this, but we also have to move on over. But the lawsuit that you can't pay an employee not to do anything because that violates, I don't even know what the argument was there.
They can do stuff. You can have them script old English, old Egyptian hieroglyphs. You can assign them some project, but the judicial branch doesn't take Congress seriously. That's clear in how they don't take the American people seriously. They hold the American people in contempt. I was up in front of the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals arguing a testing mandate case where the judge, I think he might even be the chief judge, was shocked when I raised the question of, Judge, remember your decisions here are going to impact real people. They're going to have an impact on real people. So take that into consideration when you're interpreting the law. Make sure you're absolutely right when you're going to cause a lot of harm on real people. The only reason you're there as a human being rather than AI is because you're supposed to put the human factor into the equation. And he was shocked and enraged. No, nothing I do impacts the American. How can you possibly? I get it. He wants to screw people over and doesn't want to suffer accountability for that. Doesn't want to look in the mirror for what he's doing. But this is the mindset of the judicial branch. And that's why it's going to require discipline from either the Supreme Court, the Congress, or the president for them to get back in line.
Okay, let me read a few of the, everyone get your butts on over to Rumble because we're going to do this now, but let me read just a few of the CommuTube chats. Are judges bench influencers? What does that mean?
If you mean like public influencers to a degree, yeah.
All right, I'm just going to do these quick because I had to screen grab them because I can't keep them otherwise. Here we go. We got... Are we looking at the big one now? Yeah, we are. Okay. I can't read it. How's the weather, guys? This is from Forced Name Chase. Cold AF up here. Topic. I'm having a flag made of Alberta coat of arms, but I replaced the beaver, crown, and helm with the eagle. Dude, you're going to get... People are getting angry about the Canadian stuff. Then there was... here, I got the China Hustle. Says, Viva, could you discuss my predicament with Barnes to see how I might cause of action the China Hustle? Well, this is a broader thing we'll have to potentially talk about later. Okay, now I say, okay, let's go to Rumble for a second. We got the DC federal courts must dissolve at least, says Pinochet's helicopter tours. King of Biltong, thank you for that beef bouquet. It was flipping delicious. We still have some left. Increase your protein intake by adding some healthy, high-protein snacks to your diet. Also packed with B12, iron, zinc, creatine, and much more. Get some at BiltongUSA.com. Code VIVA for 10% off. Rob, we got. I just replied to Rob. Rob, I think you're in the wrong, but that we'll have to agree to disagree. We don't want all of Canada, just Alberta, Manitoba, Yukon, Northwest Territories, the Maritimes, and Saskatchewan. You can keep BC, Quebec, Ontario, and the rest. So 6 new states. That was from Panther AI or Panther Al. Alexi Kumu says, sadly, Europe has regressed to World War I, World War II times. Efil says, theory, Trump and Poilievre had this planned months ago. Trump belittles Trudeau as he saber rattles with tariff threats to force border security measures. Canadians rally behind Poilievre, checkmate. Yeah, well, they're going to do that anyhow because Poilievre is certainly the lesser of the evils. That guy, dude, says, sorry, do you or Barnes happen to know of an internet defamation lawyer? Okay, email Barnes, Barnes Law LLP. Rob, what's the email address where people should email you?
Robert Barnes at barneslawllp.com, or if you go to the website, barneslawllp.com, the best way to reach me is to go to the contact page on the law firm website. because that actually goes to my entire team.
And then we got Old Man Toby, or that's Old Man Obi. Viva, I was on disability for 6 years, got my education. I was able to get back to work. I had to turn my paycheck for 3 years. I had to turn my paycheck for 3 years because they would not stop my payments and still over. I was on disability for 6 years, got my education. I was able to go back to work. I had to turn my paycheck for 3 years because they would not stop my payments and still overpaid me. Okay, I'm not sure. Okay, now let me do one thing here. We're going to do this, and I'm going to read a few from Get Your Butts On Over. We're going to end this very soon and bring it on over to Viva Barnes Law Rumble, and then Viva Barnes Law. We got love the Honorable Barnes in his dapper waistcoat. And Ty, this evening, thank you both for the intellectual and entertaining perspectives. I learned something every time I listen to either of you independently or together. God bless you both. Any updates on the Amos Miller PDA buzz about our new confirmation able?
It's unbelievable. I mean,
this is from Shalina.
Amos Miller is now having to deal with the IRS, so we had a tax court case. The another big Pennsylvania department is harassing him. And even though the Pennsylvania Attorney General, newly elected, got elected on the grounds that he was going to stop the harassment of the Amish and the small farmers, instead, his deputies are demanding invasive, all kinds of personal information demanding that Amos and Rebecca Miller sit for depositions, demanding in all kinds of discovery of everything under the sun. So rather than walk away from this case like was implicit in the Attorney General's election, this Republican Pennsylvania Attorney General is failing to keep his promises right away after getting elected. So unfortunately, the Amos Miller harassment continues, and I keep asking the newly confirmed Secretary of Agriculture at the federal level, Brook Rollins, when is the federal government going to stop its harassment of Amos Miller and the Amish farmers? The Amish are the reason they have a majority that they have the majority they have in the U.S. Senate. The Amish are the reason President Trump was guaranteed re-election. So is Brook Rollins the real deal, or is he another fake? I'm yet to see any evidence that Brook Rollins is the real deal. Yet to see any evidence of that. It is the one appointment the president made that nobody I know in the agriculture sector, that's on the small farmer side, knows who the heck she is. So, she snuck in as part of that America First group that was not Stephen Miller's America First group. It was an old Rick Perry, big oil funded America First group. So the Robert Kennedy as confirmation is very promising, but we're yet to hear from whether Brook Rollins is going to continue the harassment of small farmers that her predecessor did. If she's going to stop it, announce it. I mean, the first thing she could do is announce that the federal case against Amos Miller is dismissed for good, and there's going to be no more harassment.
With prejudice.
Yeah, with prejudice. Done finito. So, show that you're for real about standing by small farmers. Because your predecessor that Trump appointed, that fat-ass boss hog lookalike, Sonny Perdue, was a disgrace to protecting small farmers and originated the harassment of Amos Miller. So if Trump is going to keep that part of his promises, and he's done a great job on all the rest, Brook Rollins needs to keep her promise to President Trump and his supporters that she will actually fight for small farmers. So far, now, she just got in there, so I'm being unduly harsh on her. But I want to see action fast. We see action fast. Another key place is it appears the corrupt Justice Department is some lower level officials, I believe, are hiding the existence of the Brook Jackson case from newly confirmed Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert Kennedy, the new Commissioner of the FDA, the new Surgeon General, and from the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, and the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. I have not heard from any of them. I've heard from senators. I've heard from other people who are aware of the case. None of them appear to be aware of the case. Why is the Justice Department the only basis they dismissed Brook Jackson's whistleblower claim was they said it was against national policy to even question the vaccines. That is the exact opposite of this administration's national public policy. So Pam Bondi should be stepping into the case and reversing the Justice Department's position and saying we support the reinstatement of the Brook Jackson case, and we shouldn't have to fight for it in the Fifth Circuit to get that right reinstated. That should be the joint position of the Justice Department with their actual client in this matter, who is who? The Secretary of Health and Human Services, who is Robert Kennedy, who has publicly supported this case. So I think there's still high. I mean, you have the arrogance of the professional bureaucratic class in this respect, just like we were talking about with the judges and the bureaucracy writ large. You see it in the fact that you have a hospital in Ohio refusing to provide emergency medical care to a young girl because she doesn't have a COVID vaccine, even though her condition is a heart condition for which the COVID vaccine would make worse. And she is related to the vice president of the United States, Vice President Vance. This is how arrogant the medical establishment is after Biden pardoned Fauci, their head criminal. So this is why there needs to be corrective action. Credit President Trump. He's immediately said we're going to form health commissions. He's made sure Robert Kennedy got confirmed and other Kennedy allies got in. And he said no more vaccine mandates on schools. If you want federal funding, you don't mandate vaccines, period, end of story. If you were in the military and you were discriminated against or related to the vaccine, you're reinstated with back pay, which, by the way, the Defense Department should consider extending to contractors and subcontractors who are also fired because of the military mandate. I think they should extend that to say if you want to receive contractual revenues in the future from the federal government, just like they're doing with schools, if you want defense contracts, you want any contract, you can't mandate the vaccine. And if you previously discriminated against someone related to the vaccine, you have to offer full reinstatement to those individuals as a precondition of getting federal funds. But what it reflects writ large in the Brook Jackson case is how we still have rogue aspects of the Justice Department, I believe, hiding information from the elected heads and the confirmed heads of their departments.
Okay, now hold it, because we're going to do this on Rumble, but I'll just read two more. It's got Rush Babe, not 49, says, see my question in the comments. Hi from Communist Western Washington. And Junkman 6611 says, regarding Brook Jackson's case, what would be the ideal situation for Van Bondi could do to get this case moving forward and Pfizer held accountable for their fraudulent trials of the COVID-19 vaccine? Hold on. Answer that one over on Rumble. We are ending on CommieTube, so everyone get your butts on over to Rumble, Viva, BarnesLaw.locals.com, and then after that, we're going to have our after party. So we're going to get into this now because I'll get into hypothesizing as to who might be hiding this, and it will get there. But okay, Rumble, Viva Fry, people, see you later. I mean, YouTube at least.